I ran away from home. You may be wondering why, and that is what I am going to tell you. My father was an impatient man or a mean man of sorts because he always got mad over the tiniest little things. Even if it had nothing to do with us, he took it out on us. I couldn't stand the fighting and the yelling anymore, so I left. I snuck out so no one would see me. Oh, don't think that I'm stupid. Of course I brought food. Geez. I brought some bread, carrots, and a slice of mother's cake, which she told me not to touch ever. Oh, and I also brought water. So then I snuck out. I opened the creaky door a bit at a time so no one would hear me, and no one did. After I closed the door ever so slightly, I turned around and let out a sigh of relief, and as soon as I started walking I saw a cat, but not just any cat. Juniper, I might have said too loudly. I started to walk again and she followed me. I thought it was weird because she never took any interest in me before, but I didn't think too much of it. I kept walking, and this time, I didn't stop to look back to see if Juniper was following me or to see the house that was probably getting smaller and smaller and drifting farther and farther away. I picked up my speed so that by morning I would be far enough away from my house to find a place to rest before people started looking for me. I took a piece of bread out of my satchel and took a small bite from it. I need to save it for the next couple of days, or until I can find more food. I looked down, and by my side was, yep, you guessed it, Juniper. She had followed me all the way here. I looked back for the first time and saw that my house was now just a speck on a field that stretched across for miles. I tried to look for a place where I could stop to rest or something, but didn't find a good place, until I remembered the barn that was not far from my house. I started to run now because I wanted to find it quickly. I saw a red shape in the distance and I ran towards it at top speed. When I got close I slowed down a bit and started to walk. When I opened the door, pieces of it fell to the floor because of how old it was. My brother and I used to come down here to read and play in the hay. I loved this place, the smell of the hay, the chipping paint, the old rustic tools. And don't forget the stairs that you would climb to go up to the attic to lay on your back to watch the stars. I climbed up those exact stairs and did just that. I inhaled the smell deeply and exhaled with happiness. I took out a carrot and bit hard into it. It tasted like dirt. It was okay because I didn't mind. I lay down for so long that dozed off right there in that attic. I blinked my eyes open to see the sun shining in my eyes. I woke up and for a second didn't know where I was. Then I remembered that I ran away with Juniper, and that I ran to this barn and slept. I climbed down the stairs to see Juniper curled up in a ball still sleeping, and I opened the door to the barn and looked out. I didn't see anyone or anything except for some trees. I grabbed my satchel and tried to wake up Juniper. It took a couple tries, but she finally woke up and I scooped her up and carried her for a while. I figured I should keep walking because I wasn't super far away from my house yet. I started thinking about Mother and Father and poor little Sam, my brother. They were probably worried sick. I kept on walking quickly because if they were to check anywhere, I think it would be this barn. I walked and walked until I got to a cornfield that was farther from that barn. Next to the cornfield on the other side was a forest type thing. I walked that way and figured I could go and hide out there for a bit while I thought out where I would go from there. I thought about different paths and roads that could lead me somewhere where I could go, but couldn't think of much of anything. I was getting tired and hungry and needed a shelter with food and warmth. I thought about friends' houses that Father would drive me to in his truck, but they were too far away. I gave Juniper some bread because I believed she was hungry. I thought to myself that I would probably die out here from hypothermia or starvation or. Just then a crow flew above my head and landed on a scarecrow in the cornfield. And I know what you are thinking, why doesn't she eat the corn? Well, the corn isn't ready to be eaten at the moment. She thought to herself, how am I going to survive out here? There is no food or water or shelter, what am I going to do? She thought of the only thing that would work in her dire situation. Going back home to her warm house with her bed, food, and her family. She didn't want to go back to her house, she left that place for a reason. But she thought about it some more and realized if she wanted to survive she would have to go back. She got Juniper and her satchel with what was left of her food and was on her way back to her house. She walked along the cornfield and passed the crow, who got up from where it was sitting and flew closely to the girl. She walked back down to the barn and stopped there for a while to sit and rest and take a bit of bread. The crow landed on top of the barn and Juniper sat next to the girl. When she got up, she felt a little better because she had eaten and rested for a bit. She walked until in the distance she saw her house that was just a blob to her. She walked closer and closer till she could see it a bit better. But she didn't just see her house, she saw a car she had never seen before. Then she saw a car that looked very familiar. It was her friend Millie's mom's car. She ran over to her house and Juniper followed her, but the crow stayed behind. She opened the door and saw a man in a uniform, her mother crying, and her friend and her mother standing there. As well as Sam and her father. Her mother looked at her for a second, then smiled and ran over to her with open arms. Her friend ran over and hugged her tightly, and her mother said she is glad that she was okay. Her brother wrapped himself around her leg and hung on tightly. The man in the uniform sighed with relief and smiled. Although everyone was happy to see her, her father looked most unhappy. "What were you thinking running away like that? You scared your mother to death." I'm so sorry," the girl exclaimed. Her father wasn't so mean anymore because I think he realized that the reason why she ran away was because of him. And that was the story of the time Annalise ran away.